Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of Orson Welles' Citizen Kane in 1941. So, here we are with Citizen Kane. Here is the Blu-ray. And we'll get straight into it, saying that, yes, another film on my favourite films list that I'm reviewing. And, today is the last day that I'll, have to do a review every day from my favourite films list. But of course I'll still be doing some, it's just not every day. And this is the last one to review of this month. And yes, Citizen Kane, of course. If you really pay attention to anything, on lists of greatest films, you would have heard of Citizen Kane. It's always, for many, many decades, it topped the Sight and Sound poll, of greatest films, till of course Vertigo overtook it in the 2012 one, and AFI as well, and just general critics lists, and even in IMDb, not quite up on that level. It's still in the top 100 though. It's very much a loved film. Of course, many people have called it overrated, which can be any film has been. Pretty much every film in the world has been called overrated at some point that is acclaimed. But yes, of course, I watched this. I first watched it in 2015. For 3 years, I'd been wanting to see it, and I just thought I'd get the Blu-ray, and I sat down and watched it in 2015, and was blown away by it, and there's a few things I want to talk about first. Firstly, say for this review, I'll say I don't think it's the greatest film ever made. I don't think it's in the 10 greatest films, or even in the top 25. And it doesn't get my highest rating, but note that it's one of my favourite films. It's on my favourite films list. If people think why is it so low? To say a film is low when it's in my top 120, which this film definitely is, it's kind of an insult. It's not low. Despite what I give this rating, just because of its acclaim, I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. I do agree with that, and just because I don't think it's the greatest, but as well, I'm not going to be a person that will, as some people that have never seen the film have called it overrated, and I'm not going to be a person who says it's overrated because I don't agree it being in the 10 best films. If it's one of my favourite films, I never call that one of them films overrated. I think it's perfect. It's a flawless film. I'll say that now. In every aspect. In the direction, all the production design, cinematography, editing. The soundtrack by Bernard Herrmann is wonderful. The performances. The script. Everything, and of course the structure of the film, the way it's told for its non-linear fashion, and just everything. Its dreamlike effect that it has, and just the power that it can give. And this film, I when I saw it, I just thought, wow, that is something. And I wasn't, stupid enough to kind of say it's overrated just because it didn't, as I say, reach my top 10. I think as well. Some people, of course, will never get around to this quick enough, and maybe be a bit hesitant, or kind of feel like there's this kind of a not snobbery, but a lot of critics when they say it's the greatest film, and basically, and sometimes unfairly they say it in a manner where if you disagree you're wrong and all this kind of stuff, and they always seem, a lot of them, not everyone, great ones, Roger Ebert and stuff that did, who actually do a lot of the time. They did talk about the actual emotions behind films and the passion into it, and not just about the technical aspects. A lot of critics do say, and just only say about its technical aspects. The fact for its time and all this kind of stuff. And I think that really the thing that a lot of them miss out is just how, first of all, entertaining this film is. It's a ride. It's non-stop, just joy, and then of course it heads into the downfall, which we'll get to soon. But every single frame, and it's just full of energy, full of passion, and it's characters, especially Charles Foster Kane, who are so compelling, and it's got great humour in the film. It's full of humanity. It's such an emotional film, especially in the second half, and a very personal film, and a lot of the time, I think a lot of critics kind of just focus mainly on the technical aspects, the inventive camera work and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's actually the greatest film up to this point. I wouldn't even say that. I'd say ones that are definitely better than this as well. Gone with the Wind for me. That came out around the time. Wizard of Oz, and then of course City Lights, for sure. These sort of films. But I understand, how this is rated so highly because it's just all round perfect film, and of course, it's many things that kind of Orson Welles came up with, and of course he was 25 years old when this was released, and he wrote the screenplay, co-wrote it, main star of the film, of course, and it's the rise and fall of this character of Charles Foster Kane, a newspaper tycoon, and it's well, the he of course produced the film, he directed the film, and just something that on its own is something else. I always praise someone for doing that, and the fact that he was only 25 at the time. But putting that aside, and the fact that it's his debut, wow, what a debut. Putting that aside, on its own, what a film, and I've seen it 3 times now. This is my 3rd viewing, and I just now more than ever, it just really is just one of my favourite films. The first sort of 10 minutes or so, when I first saw it, I thought this is great. It's very stunning camera work, all this kind of thing. The way that it's narrated is very, very just engaging in that sense, and it's covering this guy's, this man's life from a kind of a detached manner, objectively. But then, after that sort of 12 minutes or so, when you see these investigators trying to see what this word rosebud means, of course, because you see that at the beginning, you know that he dies, and you see that, and he drops the thing and it says rosebud, and then they're kind of investigating. There's that scene where the stunning cinematography and everything, and then there's 15 minutes or so after that, it starts to really become. That's when it becomes one of my favourite films. And it just gets better and better and better, and more personal. This is very non-linear, and it does that. It covers all that very, very quickly, glosses over it, and then it digs right into it personally, and then it goes in depth into all the different kind of areas of your life and time periods. And I think that's once you've seen the rest of the film, you realise how that's why he done that. At the beginning, kind of thing. It kind of builds up some mystery as well before you actually personally get into this man's life, and it builds it up. It becomes more of a mystical character, you could say, and then you get to go in and dig into personally and see him his rise and fall, and it very much it is a rise and fall, classic thing in cinema where the rise and fall is just one of the most effective things a filmmaker can do in his film, portray. There's many films that do this. Goodfellas, Raging Bull, a lot of Scorsese, Clockwork Orange, even, loads of films. The Godfather, one in particular. The second one is not so much of that. It's very different, of course. But yeah, there's classic examples really where it's just the stuff that works, the best really, a lot of the time, and the way that this film portrays that is absolutely masterful. Orson Welles in this film, masterful performance, one of the best performances of all time, easily. And I think this film really, now seen as again one of the top 20 for sure, or top 25 character arcs in cinema. Just the way it progresses and the way he changes, and the way that you feel for this character, and you look back to the beginnings as well. You see him as a kid as well, and they were wonderful scenes. When I say dreamlike, this film, that's some of the scenes that portray that the most, and it's just wonderful. It's a thoroughly warm film as well, full of heart. That's the thing. Another thing that critics sometimes tend not to mention, just how personal it is, how warm it is. It's not just this art, this kind of machine, this technical thing. It's a shame that sometimes they don't mention this, and it is full of warmth, and just really, really human film. And you see him as a kid, and of course, I won't ruin some of the other things, but basically it goes through his life, and at times it goes back to it jumps ahead again, and it comes back to the main progression that we're doing, and it's just wonderful in its structure. Really is a film that you can't. After seeing it, maybe a couple of weeks after, you kind of don't fully remember the exact order of the events, but you remember them events, you know what I mean? Kind of like maybe Pulp Fiction, not so much though. And yeah, it's just one of them films that it allows as well a rewatch to be even, you kind of, I remember that slightly differently to how it plays out. it's just, you know, really, really great that it does that. You know, the structure of the film is wonderful. You know, every scene as well has a flow to the next. It adds the momentum that is needed, and you know, this film, you know, the rise of the film, it's basically very, very energetic. You know, it's Orson Welles, his character is very, very charming. You know, full of life and everything, and it's just really, really joyous, these scenes. You know, and straight away just drawn into all of it, and you know, the characters. Joseph Cotten as well, which plays Jedediah, you know, kind of one of his partners. He is great in the film, and you know, he's a great actor. And you know, I've seen a few films with him in now. You know, The Third Man, of course, his biggest role probably. Shadow of a Doubt, and as well Heaven's Gate. But you know, I really hate Heaven's Gate. I won't get into that. But yes, no, he really is overall, from what I've seen, a great actor, and he's great in this. You know, very, very memorable, and the kind of relationship they have, it's very powerful as well. And of course, you've got loads of other different characters, and you know, it's just wonderful. You know, all these characters, and the script is really something else. You know, not just the way he plays with dialogue, but you know, very, very powerful script. You know, the kind of the life lessons it kind of gets across, and just the way how these characters are developed, especially of course, you know, Charles Foster Kane. Something else, you know, the writing is striking, and even better is of course the actual direction and the cinematography and everything. It's just wonderful, you know. It's the way the camera moves is something else, you know. Very, very graceful, and of course just constantly engaging, the way it kind of engages you. It gives you more information, just visual storytelling, you know. Another fine example of masterful visual storytelling, and the editing is so good, you know, and just the way the fades, you know, they kind of show time passing. It's just a perfect film, it really is, in every area, you know. Direction is just, it is flawless, and I'm not going to argue that. You know, it is an absolutely perfect film, and it's one that is also though full of emotion, full of humanity, and just a film that I really, really connect to on every level. You know, I love all these, as I say, these scenes where, you know, it's the rise of it, you know, and just the one that I was constantly engaged in. You know, it's a very, very funny film. You know, a lot of people don't mention that. It's great comedy, and you know, especially the bit where it cuts to the guy and he goes, "And a happy new year." That bit was really hilarious. You know, just comedy through editing, comedy through the dialogue as well. And as well, you know, Orson Welles is kind of, he's always got, you know, he's, from what I've seen of him, a sense of, you know, humour to his characters that he plays, and charm, and, you know, kind of smugness, but not in that way, but, you know, in a charming way. And, you know, it just adds that as well to the film, and there's great comedy in this film, and it's just wonderful, you know. I think as well, when it starts to get to the decline, you know, the fall, that's when it gets even better. You know, and that's when it really gets into the, you know, probably, you know, not far off, even though in the top 100 films of all time, finest, and you know, that's really when it gets, you know, absolutely mind blowing. It's something else, you know. Of course, the performance as well. You know, what performance of Orson Welles, you know, very, very different. You know, as I say, kind of jolly, outgoing character at the beginning, and then, you know, when he gets older in the film, you see them scenes. It's a complete, you know, stark contrast, and that's when he really shows so much emotion, and his stance, even, you know, and all the makeup is just wonderful, but his stance, his eye contact that he, you know, he gives, and just, you know, the outbursts, you know, the arguments and stuff. Wow, that is something else. The way he commands the screen, and you know, just his voice as well, booming voice that he has. Orson Welles, you know, I've only actually seen 2 films, I must say now, and that's The Third Man and this, of him, you know, he's been in, and each time it's just one of the most memorable performances I've ever seen, and I can guarantee that he's going to want to see more of his films. Be one of my absolute favourite actors of all time. I think and of course he directed, he wrote the film, you know, it's just something else. He was really just an auteur. You know, of course, as well, which I briefly mentioned, cannot wait to the rest of his films. But of course, very, very interesting that after this, most of the films, the studios very much, interfered with, severely cut his films, especially the Magnificent Ambersons, which is the one I look forward to the most. Maybe with, Chums at Midnight and stuff like that, but certainly probably that one the most. But that's the one that was cut the most, of course. Down to, I'm not sure, maybe about 90 minutes. And it's a shame that happened. And it's quite odd, really, as well. But considering how great this film was, you'd think that they'd let him kind of run, his own kind of thing. But yeah, it's unfortunate. But this is the one where he had full control, really. You could say absolute control, and he's given final cut and all that. And what a film it turned out to be, and I can understand definitely if someone would say this is the best film of all time. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's overrated because it is one of the finest for me. I think and once it gets to them, the last half of the film, there's something else. It's a film of its own. It's very very sad, very very sad decline, and I felt a lot for this character. Very very sympathetic. But as well, he does stuff that kind of quite harsh and stuff, and it's very in that sense, very layered character, and there's no bias or anything. He's portrayed, as a flawed human, and once basically all the gloss runs off and that of this newspaper business, you really see the true Charles Foster Kane, and that's wonderful that Orson Welles done that, portrayed him in that light, and in that sense, he's just one of the. He is, for me, one of the greatest characters in cinema. One of the most compelling, entertaining, sympathetic, and just interesting. Very very unique, and a lot. Not everything is revealed, of course, which is great. There's still a lot of mystery at the end, but what is revealed is just so compelling on the screen. It's just wonderful, and of course, I will say that yes, the actual techniques, the camera work is stunning. And the deep focus. Use of that is really something else. The way Orson Welles, Charles Foster Kane is portrayed through the camera angles alone, and everything, and the shots, and just the way he's this, kind of overbearing character towards the end as well, and stuff, and as well the way that kind of he's framed and everything, but the way he's shot, kind of portrayed in relation to his surroundings, and the way the scenes near the end where. They're very distanced. Him and other characters. His wife, Susan, who is his last wife in the film, and she's a great character as well. Great performance, and the way that they're kind of distanced through the camera work and everything, and just the shots is something else. Just visual storytelling once again, as I say, masterfully done, and it all just builds and builds until the final scenes are just stunning, of course, and what an ending, one of the best endings in cinema, and of course you see, well, a lot of people, are definite on what, Rosebud is, and what it means, but, I think I am now, yeah, definitely, and what I'll say is, it's built up over the film, this word Rosebud, and, it's constantly kind of mentioned, and they try and investigate what this means, and, really perfect for what I think it means. It's just a wonderful, that's what I say, a lovely little kind of symbolism kind of thing that you've done there. Just what it actually means, it just makes it even more powerful. And then really the rest of the film on a rewatch, because of that, as well as many other things, makes the film even more personal, even more of a human film. You look back on different things and you kind of see them slightly differently, and it opens up even more. And now I've seen it 3 times. It just now or never. I absolutely adore this film from start to finish, and it is a perfect film. There's nothing more I can say really. It's just Orson Welles was an absolute genius, especially with this film, and I cannot wait to see the rest of his films. I've not acquired all of them yet, of course, and I can't buy every Blu-ray in the world, but I will be getting around to that, of course, at some point soon. And I've got a touch of evil, and I can rewatch The Third Man again soon. Can't wait to review that. But Orson Welles, his performance, as I say, in this film is monumental. And just all the characters in this film are wonderful. I just absolutely love the puzzle-like structure of the film, of the narrative, but it never loses the flow. That's the thing, you know, with a non-linear film. It has to have a flow. You know, something like Pulp Fiction does as well perfectly. But this one, you know, it's non-linear, but it also has a flow, and each scene still adds to the actual narrative, even though it's not always in the right order. And it as well, it kind of allows it to be a participation film. You know, the way that you're trying to piece together, you know, the actual chain of events, and you're trying to find out really what this rosebud thing means. And then once you see, you know, what rosebud is, it becomes even more of a personal film. But you're still kind of having fun with the actual narrative and the structure of it. You know, I think critics really should really just say more the word fun with this film, because it really is. It is that, you know, it's one of the most engaging films I've ever seen. You know, and it's not just this film that's, you know, should be praised for its technical aspects. You know, it's just, you know, of course that is hand in hand, but you know, just the way that this film engages and as well moves me. Something else, you know, I think overall, as I've said, this film is a flawless masterpiece. It gets into my plus tiers, you know, easily. It's one of the finest in cinema, and you know, I think you know, and this is not a low score. You know, anything with this score is stunning, but I give this film 100% plus, tier 2, and a very high tier 2. You know, it's maybe within 10 of being in a tier, you know, 10 slots of being, you know, within a tier 1, and then, you know, that would be pretty much in my top 100. This film, you know, I absolutely adore from start to finish. It's one of my most loved films, you know, a film that I'm obsessed with, and yeah, you can see why critics and filmmakers have studied this film. But as well, I think really to pitch the film, you know, they should really, you know, focus more as well on how much heart this film has, you know, and how fun it is, and how you know, emotional it is, how easy it is to connect to actually, you know, and just how much of a visual treat, of course, it is, you know, and it's just from start to finish perfect. The visual storytelling is masterful. You know, all the characters are wonderful. Performances, especially Orson Welles, of course. Something else, you know, as I say, one of the top 25 character arcs in cinema for me, and the soundtrack by Bernard Herrmann is wonderful, very dreamlike, as are the visuals, of course. Put you in this trance, under this spell, and the use of shadows and everything like that to portray the characters as well. You know, the darkness and just the bits where, you know, Billy hits his wife, and the bits where he kind of just, he stands over her and stuff. Through the use of shadows and everything, it's just wonderful the way he does that. The editing is perfection, and yeah, just such a masterful piece of storytelling, and wonderful work of art and entertainment. You know, it's wonderful. This film, you know, it's not the best for me, and who cares? You know, I could say that about so many films. It's not a con, is it? If you're saying, you know, it's not the best film ever made. It's not this film that I think is the best of the 20th century. You know, that was made in the 70s. If you want to maybe get a clue of that. And, you know, this film, it doesn't matter if it's not the best, it's one of the best for me. And I'd highly recommend this film, of course, you know, the Blu-ray. And there's more expensive editions out there as well, collector's ones. But this film, you know, I really, you know, highly recommend it. It's one of my favourites. And it's not just one of the best, it is one really very, very much accessible film, you know, and it's one that the rise and fall, you know, that thing that you see a lot in films, is portrayed perfectly here. So, you know, definitely recommend it, and, you know, don't be put off or anything by that, and don't think when you see it, you know, it's disappointing just because it's not your favourite, your absolute favourite, you know, and that's a shame that happens sometimes. But as it stands, Citizen Kane is a masterpiece, and very, very close to being in my top 100 films of all time. So yeah, wonderful film, in my top 120, of course, and cinematic perfection. So yeah, Citizen Kane. Thanks for watching my review.